Hello, this is Carolyn Cushing of Soul Path Sanctuary, and I'm here to talk about the May 2020 full moon. We began this cycle with the new moon and the initiating energy that came from the associations, the Astro Tarot associations of Taurus, and Taurus related to the Hierophant. And the Hierophant is the teacher in the tarot. I have this here in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And you can see it looks like the Pope. It's often associated with the Pope. And this is the person who gives the rules and the structure. And as someone who loves the wisdom traditions of across the globe and cultures, but has problems and challenges with being in just one institution, I'm sometimes challenged by the Hierophant in this traditional way of its looking. So for the new moon, I turned to look at other associations. Each astrological sign is ruled by a certain planet, a mythological association, and the Hierophant is connected to Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. And Venus is associated with the Empress card of the tarot. And here is the Empress in Tarot Roots of Asia, which is just such a beautiful image. And you see the Empress as really kind of Mother Nature and what nurtures and sustains life. So the beginning of the month, April 22nd, we were thinking about what do we serve? You know, if we're in roles like Hierophants offering structures and rules for people, why are we doing it? Who do we serve? To remember that. And now the full moon comes, which is reminding us also again of service and the bigger picture. And this full moon comes in Scorpio, which is a source associated with the Death card. And here's the Death card in Tarot Roots of Asia, which is a wonderful image of death, this kind of surrender, but then out of that surrender comes growth. And of course, the Death card does not always mean physical death, and you're working with the cards, it mostly does not mean physical death. So it's these kind of changes that really transform our lives. And we are in a time of a lot of change and transformation as across the globe we face this pandemic. And I was starting to think about this full moon, the idea of we open up to revelation at full moon time, to our understanding of the new moon energy, of our understanding of how we are able to walk the path, walk our soul path. And it came to me that I did this wisdom reading with Rachel Pollack using the Raziel Tarot in August of 2016, but the cards associated with this month and with this time we're in. So I'm going to introduce you to that reading. I'm going to bring up my screen sharing here. We have some images for you to be able to see. Get full screen. And we will play from the start. So the Hierophant stands before death is the overall theme of this May 2020 full moon. And this is the reading that we did. Rachel Pollack and I did this reading using the Raziel, which is majors only. And we asked, using her wisdom tradition, her wisdom readings, you ask philosophical questions instead of just personal questions. And we asked, what is destiny? What is fate? What is fortune? And the cards that appeared are the High Priest, which is the new moon card. And then the Death card, which is now we're about to have this full moon encounter. And then fortune was the Tower. And you could say that these pandemic times that we're in are thrusting us all into the Tower. So let me tell you a bit more about how we explored the meaning. So Destiny card, the High Priest. Our destiny is to stand before something greater than ourselves. In this card of Destiny, Aaron, as the first High Priest, is shown with the Ark of the Covenant, which was created from instructions given by God to hold the 10 Commandments, the divine law. The Ark becomes a physical representation of God's presence. And the High Priest, first Aaron, but then the High Priests that follow him, they play a special role in tending this treasure. The Hebrews gave God a name that could not be spoken, to recognize God's greatness beyond measure. Other traditions have given the divine evocative names: Ra, Shining Ones, Kuan Yin, Aphrodite, Green Man, Jesus, Spider Woman. Each culture reaches towards its own naming of what is unnameable. And as we humans strive to find that name to call out to, we also connect with practices, places, or objects that help us to meet and stand in relationship with that something that is greater than our individual lives. And not everyone believes in deity, but the forces of the natural world are awesome as well. And in the end, we all stand before death. So like Aaron before the ark, his greater than is represented by the ark, which you can see here with the angels and the tableau. But like Aaron before the ark, our destiny is to stand before something greater than ourselves. Now, each of these cards that we pulled for the reading, they had an underlying card. Rachel calls it the teacher card, and I kind of think of it as like that deeper underground offering influence. And so when, I forgot a little piece I wanted to say about Aaron before we go to the underground influence. When we talk about destiny, we are often referencing a specific role that we believe we are called to play. Aaron, in this image, stands solidly in his role as high priest. When stepping into a role we have sought, we may feel our destiny is achieved. But what about those areas in which we do not realize our visions? What about the inevitable failures that come along with any life? And this deeper card underneath the high priest, I believe, has this answer. So the card underneath was the sun. Here in the Raziel Tarot image, you see youthful innocence arise from a broken jar, which represents the inherent brokenness of the world. But each child, each one of us, brings a unique light into the world and can play a part in its repair. This repair is known as tikkun olam, which in its earliest meaning called for religious practices. So this was focused on repair of the soul. And now is most often equated with contributing to social justice, which is repair of the physical world and its institutions. And neither meaning is a specific role required to participate in tikkun olam. In fact, the nakedness of the children is a symbol of their freedom from roles that so often come with prescriptions as what to wear and how to appear. So as we move through our lives, standing before the greater than, we will step into certain roles that can be a container for the expression of the important work we are called to do, our destiny perhaps. But the sun, as the deeper teacher, reminds us that even when those roles fall away, when we don't achieve everything that we thought we might, we still have that light of being to offer to the world and to contribute to its repair. So this is our destiny is to stand before something greater than ourselves. Now we come to our fate. Our fate is death. And like Moses, this is the image of Moses on the mountaintops. Like Moses on the mountaintop, seeing the promised land he will not enter, we are all fated to die. We don't have a choice about death's place in our life, but we do have a choice in the relationship that we make with death. So much of the language of death is filled with the metaphor of battle. But when we make death our enemy, we will fail. We will never conquer death. Making death our enemy closes us off from what we might learn from its dark transitions. Now, to go to the deeper teacher card, here we see the Empress, which, as you remember, is inspired who rules this new moon month. So the Empress flows below death as our fate to be our guide and our teacher. And here in this image, we have Miriam, who is Moses' sister. And she saves Moses from death as a child by hiding him at the water's edge when the Pharaoh ordered all infant boys of the enslaved Hebrew Israelites in Egypt to be killed. When the grown Moses succeeds in leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, she raises her timbrel. That's what we see in the image, her tambourine, her timbrel, to lead a victory song that may be some of the oldest texts in the Bible. There's the idea of maybe she's connected to a water goddess image, and maybe this text can go back to some of those kinds of hymns. But she sings, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Miriam's waters are not always gentle. Sometimes they bring death. Miriam herself dies as the Hebrews wander in the wilderness on the way to the promised land. But from the place where she is buried, a spring of life-sustaining waters open. Life and death are entwined in Miriam's story. She saves the infant Moses from death, but celebrates the death of the Egyptian forces that would have re-enslaved her people. When her death comes, it gives rise to water in the desert. She flows with the cycles of life, death, life, and her example invites us to recognize how these forces are linked together. Death can feed life, life serves death. Unlike his sister, Moses, his burial place is a mystery in the Bible. The rabbinical literature fills this gap with the story that inspired the Raziel's image of death that you see here on the right. Here, Moses is approaching his death, and he stands in the embrace of the Shekinah, the divine feminine. He faces the unknown and takes a step forward, held and supported by the Shekinah's wings. In one version of the story, Moses is kissed by the Shekinah and his body lifts away. There was no burial. Moses ascends on the wings of the divine as a reward for his faithful service to God and his people. Looking at this image here and death, his face is serious. He is looking into the unknown with a certain watchfulness. He may not know what to do next, but he is paying attention so he can meet what is coming. While we are unwise to make death our enemy, we don't know death well enough to make it our friend. We know our friends so we can be familiar with them, but we won't know death until we cross its threshold. Moses' attitude in this image shows us a way to make that crossing by paying attention to the unknown coming so that it can be given a proper greeting. Okay, and our final question is, what is fortune? And here, fortune is not ours at all, which is really, it's not individual. We're part of a larger context, and we are really experiencing this as part of this pandemic, which is holding us all across the whole globe. So I started my musings on this card as a fortune as, well, the tower is an alarming response to the question, what is fortune? The bursting flames of this image show us fortune as chaos. With chaos as a central feature of fortune, this card is a wake-up call for our ego-protecting selves, with the reminder we are not in control. The writer Annie Dillard says it's this way: we are most deeply asleep at the switch when we fancy we control any of the switches at all. I'm reminded this January, I had different ideas about what would happen, and now here we are. When we fall into such a sleep, fortune awakens us. The Raziel Tarot shows us the wake-up call that came to the Israelites when their temple was destroyed not just once, but twice. Returning now to the history. And each destruction was connected to a period of exile for the Israelites. The human and physical destruction was enormous. Descriptors such as chaos and tragedy are not exaggerations from these historical events. A people do not emerge from such experiences unchanged. In religious life, the rabbis, who were the teachers, kind of very much connected to the people, they became the spiritual leaders, replacing the high priests like Aaron, who had, a very much higher kind of rank and ritual and ceremony that they led. So this change, this was a shift that led to an emphasis on the study of Torah and Jewish law rather than temple practices and political governance. Midrash, which are stories told by rabbis to fill in the gaps of the Torah, became a lively practice and gifted the world with a rich wisdom tradition. And the Raziel Tarot, in a way, is a midrash about Jewish tradition and in images and Rachel Pollack's Stories and Words. So the pain of the destruction fortune brings is often enormous and at times unbearable. But once the structures destroyed by fortune have fallen, we're invited to work with what has changed, to find the new gestating in what remains. And this leads us to the deeper teacher of the tower is the hangman. The deeper teacher of fortune is the hangman. Here is the fallen angel Shemazai, and it continues an ongoing process of descent. Through his story, his history is this process of descent. First, Shemazai surrendered being an angel to become a man. Then he surrendered his place on earth to act an act of repentance to save humanity from the great flood. But the flood came anyway. He is falling still. But if you look at this image, you will see that at last the ropes that tie him are loosening. You can see really those ropes are very loose. He is surrendering to the falling and the failing, and it seems as if this might be what sets him free. The hangman invites us to surrender to the losses of fortune, and when we do, we shift our perspective to see what new light can be liberated from destruction. In the image, the menorah remains in front of the temple. Although the 9-branched menorah is better known because of its modern use at Hanukkah, the original menorah was 7-branched. 7 is the number of alchemical transformation that turns the base and most difficult realities of destruction into powerful new creations that liberate us from what limits us. And vital to this is, the surrender involves really looking at and recognizing what has happened. It's not a glossing over or minimizing the destruction that's happened. So the deeper teacher of fortune is the hangman. And now just before I go there, this was a wisdom reading for us to think about destiny, fate, and fortune. And now on the full moon coming Thursday morning, Eastern Standard Time is 6:45 a.m. on Thursday. And on full moon on Wednesday night, Thursday night, these nights is a good time to open up to revelations, flash of insight, and to do some ritual. I always like moon bathing, just lying under the moon, reflecting on what you've been happening in the first half of the moon cycle. And for this moon and this reading, I have this idea of doing a personal reading on destiny, fate, and fortune. I wouldn't ask the questions, what is my destiny? What is my fate? What is my fortune? Just because they're such big concepts and then we often misinterpret what we say. But to kind of go down to the smaller, asking some individual questions and building off of our new moon reading. Here are 3 questions. Who or what faith of the greater than do I serve? So it's the idea of the Hierophant needs to serve the empress or the mother goddess, or we need to connect with the divine. And if you're working with a tarot deck, you might want to work with the majors only for this first question, or work with a deck that shows all figures of the divine. And then having that being our central guide, you could then ask, what advice does this greater than have for meeting the current winds of fortune blowing? You could translate it to being in this time of pandemic, or the winds of fortune in your life, your community. And then what next steps does this greater than invite us to take for traveling toward our destiny, singing a song of life? So it's inspired by Miriam. So this reading is on the Soul Path Sanctuary blog, soulpathsanctuary.com/blog. So if this is moving too quickly for you, you can go and find those questions there. And before I close, I want to just talk a little bit. We're at the height of the lunar cycle, full moon, and we're also approaching the height of the solar cycle, which comes on the summer solstice, June 21st. And so we're going to be with the sun, and also moving into Soul Path Sanctuary each time of year around the solstice. We walk the ways of the summer light. And walking the ways of the summer light is a e-retreat. a retreat in everyday life. There are prompts that come to you via email and some recorded things so that you can open yourself up to the revelation in the place where you live. And then we also do gather and share our stories. And the sun, of course, the sun is central to the solstice. And also I love this sun image, as I talked about, they are naked. They are just down to who they are outside of their roles and responsibilities. And the 4 weeks leading up to the solstice, we at the soul at Walking the Ways of the Summer Light, we connect with the elements and we walk around our yards, our houses. Maybe we can go further afield, and we step out of our everyday roles and we seek questions rather than answers. And then we arrive at the solstice, we have a solstice celebration, and we pick one of those questions to seek an answer to. And then we go on what's called a little bit of a pilgrimage, because there is a seeking of an answer. And let me just go to this next slide. So Walking the Ways of the Summer Light, it's happening 2020. And I'm collaborating this year with Yasbelt Fernandez, which is very exciting for many, many reasons. One particular thing she's going to do is lead us in creating some herbal tinctures and brews, some very simple things, some a little bit more complex, inspired by the Herb Crafter Tarot. And we start May 24th, and it goes July through July 5th. And you can join at any time. You could drop in for a week or two. And we have some really special pricing because people's incomes have been impacted by COVID-19. For the 6 weeks, it could be $17 if you've lost your income because of COVID-19. And our more standard fees are $47, or if you can help kind of balance things out, $97. So very affordable, and a support for tending your soul and gathering the gifts of the season and kind of attending to these energies that we're experiencing now. So details at soulpathsanctuary.com. And there it is. I hope may you have revelations on the full moon, and may you take good care. Wash your hands. Be well. Okay. Stop that sharing.